Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Hahn. I want to thank everyone for attending the Dark Web webinar that we're hosting by Sachs Technology Advisors. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes and give people an opportunity to sign in. I expect this to be a really great webinar. I hope everyone gets a lot out of this, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're just giving people a couple more minutes to get on the webinar. We want to thank you for your time and signing in today, and we'll be starting the presentation shortly. Thank you. Just coming on one more time, we're going to start the presentation here in about one more minute or so, maybe two. I see people are still signing on. The numbers are jumping here, so I want to give everyone the opportunity to hear this from the beginning. Thank you very much for your patience, and we shouldn't be too much longer. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Matthew Hahn. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Sachs Technology Advisors. We are a division of Sachs LLP. We are having a webinar today regarding the dark web. The dark web is one of those areas that some people may know about from a 50,000-foot view. Some people may have a little bit more knowledge about it. I'm here today to sort of help shed some light on what the dark web is, how it impacts us, our business, what actions we can take as professionals and business owners, and at the end of the presentation for the registered attendees, we'll be showing a statistic on the current state of credential breaches for their organizations, not in particular, but globally as a whole. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and dive in here to what is the dark web. So the dark web, to put things into perspective, we can equate it, the entire World Wide Web, to oceans, right? We could certainly scan the surface of our oceans to pick up, identify everything we find. But there's so much untapped area in the deep that is beyond our reach. When we look at the ocean and when we see these fantastic National Geographic pictures of these crazy looking fish and eels and all these things, I can equate it like that. Fish begin to look they're normal looking at the surface. And the deeper you go, the darker you go, the scarier they look. So what's great is if you ever do any insight or research about the dark web or the internet, you're going to take a look and you're going to see that many organizations and people who present this type of content typically will use an iceberg. And it's a fantastic analogy to use because here, the public web, which is the internet that you and I use, go online, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff, is essentially 4% of the World Wide Web that we use today. 4%. There's so much content there. Isn't that something else? So if we move on to what is just under the public web, which is called the deep web, the deep web is actually the vast majority of the content that resides on the internet, and it equals approximately 93%. This information isn't typically indexed by search engines, like Chrome or Internet Explorer, Safari, things like that, and may not require authentication in some cases because it's used internally. We'll touch on that. And the area of topic today is called the dark web, or it's also called the dark net in some cases, and it equals approximately 3%. And this information is definitely not accessible through traditional browsers. It requires different technology in order to access it, and we'll touch a little bit on that today. So often confused with the dark web is the deep web. And as I mentioned, it makes up approximately 93% of the World Wide Web and is mainly legal websites that are purposely hidden. Some of the examples of this include company internal sites like intranets, school intranets, online databases, pages behind paywalls, medical records, financial records, scientific and government reports, as well as subscription-only information. This information is typically held in the deep web. In security, there's a saying called security through obscurity. And if it isn't made aware in plain sight, then you may have a better chance of some security being implemented without the actual cost around it. Then we dive deeper into what's called the dark web. This is the buried layer of the internet that is comprised of a network of hidden websites that is not detected by conventional search engines like Google, Yahoo, Internet Explorer, Chrome, anything else you want to use, even Netscape for those people who haven't moved on to the newer search engines. It's only accessible by means of special software such as Tor browsers. You may have heard of this type of technology. This unique browser allows users and website operators to remain anonymous and untraceable by keeping their IP addresses hidden, masked, or more importantly, spoofed. It'll show as if you're coming from a different location altogether, whether it be Yemen or somewhere else. And that's the whole purpose of the dark web, is the anonymity, the ability to stay anonymous. So I'm going to try a poll here, and we're going to see how this goes. I'd like to ask you, with a poll, how many of the registered attendees feel that the dark web impacts their business? So if you see that poll that's popped out in front of you, if you could please do me a favor and go ahead and answer that. I'll be closing the poll shortly. I see numbers are still coming in. It's very exciting. All right, I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds. Okay. So I'm not sure if you're seeing the results, but essentially what we have here is show poll results. There we go. Everyone here should be able to see the poll results at this point. So 64% of the attendees on this webinar said yes, it does impact them. 36% says no, it doesn't impact them. And that's certainly interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure that we're back into the webinar here. And we're going to go into the next part of our journey, which is whether it impacts us. Where the deep web is generally a place of privacy, the dark web is a place of anonymity, because you can function in this secret area of the internet without being traced. The dark web is a breeding ground for illegal activity with unfortunately no way to identify the criminals or block illegal acts such as drug sales, stolen credit card information, hackers for hire, terrorism, human trafficking, hitmen, and more. It sounds like a terrible movie. I mean, if you are movie buffs out there, you may have heard of some of the movies out there like Dark Web or Deep Web. There's another one called Who Am I? And there's one other one called Down the Deep Dark Web. So these are some great movies that you might want to take a look at if you like that sort of thing. There's also some great series more on the hacker side called Mr. Robot, which is a fantastic one that I certainly enjoy. So how does the illegal workings of the dark web impact you and your company? Essentially, hackers are targeting organizations to gain access to money and data. Data equals money. And sometimes the money that they're accessing is being sent to them through phishing and social engineering methods. The dark web is a virtual marketplace where hackers can go and sell all the data that they've acquired. When information such as usernames and passwords are available on the dark web, criminals could use it to access your company's network, social media sites, payroll sites, or even client web portals. There are 3 common access points your users will have: email accounts, employee self-service accounts, and VPN connections. Once inside your organizations, criminals have the ability to steal more data, cause further damage, and ultimately cost your business more money to recover. And let's think about this. The reality is reputation is at stake. You should stop and consider how you would be perceived by your clients if your company were ever breached and hackers obtained their data, if you're in fact processing any information for them. Let's take a look at one of the slides that is pulled down from the dark web. So I'm sure anyone who has a little bit of dark web knowledge or have heard some things about the dark web have heard of Silk Road, right? So Silk Road was a very well-known drug distribution center. It was shut down once. The originator has gone to jail, but since that website has come back up in different flavors, and that's one of the tricks about the dark web is it's very, very hard, if not impossible, to have any sort of control over what happens. In fact, I would say it's more impossible. Rent a Hacker. Here's a site. To get an idea of what we're dealing with, this is an example of a real ad for illegal activity that can easily be found on the dark web. So what is this person doing? This person is letting you know that they have 20 plus years experience since they were 16 in working with code, right? Their prices are very, very firm. I'm not looking to make a few bucks here with some crappy Eastern European country and happy to scam people for 50 euros. I'm a professional computer expert who could earn lots of money. I'm legit. You want to use me. These are my technical skills, and he touches on some code there, which are typically for web-based and back-end software that you and I see as websites, as well as social engineering skills, right? Social engineering, be that like phishing, right? Spear phishing, and things like that. It's pretty scary stuff. So, how do these people make money? And, what are they doing with it? So first of all, I'm sure everyone's familiar with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It's used to pay for things electronically and operates independently of a central bank. There's been a lot of news around Bitcoin and other variants of Bitcoin that have gained tremendous attention simply because of the fluctuation of their value. Bitcoin is the primary form of currency used on the dark web, as it can easily be converted into cash and the transactions are untraceable. So, what are we worth? The reality is the cost of identity is literally a steal for hackers. Once they breach your data, they can auction off your personal credentials to the highest bidder. Here's some of the most common pieces of information and what they sell for. Social security number, $1. That's something, isn't it? I would think it would be a little bit more. Driver's license information sells for about $20. Diplomas, I would imagine the level of degree that you have is $100 to $400. Online payment services information, PayPal, right? Venmo, things like that, $20 to $200. Loyalty accounts, $20. Passports, $1,000 to $2,000. Credit card information, as you can see, if you have the CVV number, it's worth a little bit more. With the bank number is a nice double play, and you can get the trifecta with the full information for $30 you get if you have someone's full credit card information. Non-financial institution logins, $1. And as you can see, subscription services and medical records also bring in potentially some money there as well. This is what it's worth. So I guess one person's information, if they are able to tap into a lot of the information that's available to them, they could represent a fair amount of money to a hacker. And we have to ask ourselves, how are they getting this information? And that's the whole point of why we're here today, to understand better how they get it and where it winds up. So, how easy is it to have your data breached on the dark web? So I'm going to do another poll here. I'm going to see how this works. I want to ask the audience if they've ever experienced any one of the following, computer-related cyber threat attempts. Have you ever received a phishing email? Have you ever received a call from the IRS or Microsoft saying you owe money or you're doing something wrong? Ever get a vishing call? That's like a phishing email, but through voice. Polls in. Going to give it one more minute. Numbers are still changing. Okay. This is really interesting. Fantastic. Okay. The poll is closed, folks. I'm going to share the information. And so it's really interesting. 90, well, I'm not even sure how this is possible. I see. 98%, they have received a phishing call. 65 of that 98% have gotten a call from either the IRS or Microsoft, and 51% have received a phishing call. That's really, really interesting stuff. So you can see these are just some of the ways that data can get breached and posted onto the dark web. Simple as that. It goes beyond just trying to access your computer and keep your data from you. They are exfiltrating your information. It's really important to see. I'm going to go ahead and hide this, and we're going to get back into, here we go. 2 out of 3 organizations average 5 or more breaches in the past 2 years. So a breach could be whether it's a username and password is sent out, maybe it could be some PII information, right? Personally identifiable information, maybe PHI, which is personal health information in an electronic form, also known as ePHI. Another statistic that we identified is that nearly half of consumers currently use or have used in the past services of organizations that were involved in publicly disclosed data breach. All right, I'm sure we're familiar with who these people are. These organizations like Facebook, LinkedIn, Anthem Healthcare, so many. This is an interesting statistic. Since 2013, businesses have collectively lost through email $12,536,948,299. So it seems like a crazy number, but in reality, if you think about some of the home runs that these people are getting, wire $50,000 here, $100,000 there, it can add up very fast. These people aren't doing it as one-offs. These hackers are using tools just like everyone else, automation, scripting, leveraging the power of the PC, quantum computing. There's a lot of things that are going for us with technology as moral individuals, and then there's everything also going against us for people who don't exactly have the same ethical approach to life. So this is exciting. I have another poll. So let's go ahead and launch another poll here. So this poll is, how many of the attendees today have been through a formal security awareness program by their employer, have gone through, or their employees have a program? So what I'd like to see is, what the climate is of the registered attendees of this webinar. I've given yes, no, kinda, I don't know. Kinda is a real answer, right? Because you can kind of do something. You may not do it great, but you're kind of doing something. So kind of is better than no. Don't change your answers now, though. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it a few more seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll, and we are going to share the results. So of the attendees, 53% of you have gone through, or your organization does offer a security awareness training platform. 38% of you have not, and 9% of you kinda. So the kinda is great. Obviously, you know that you have somewhere to go. We're going to talk a little bit about why it's important. So let's go ahead and jump back into it. For those who aren't really aware of what a security awareness program is, it's basically empowering your employees to identify what could potentially lead to a security breach, incident, or event. But you say to yourself, what can I do to prevent the breach? Well, let's look at some of the things that are helping breaches occur. The vast majority of cyber attacks on a company are successful due to inadequate security awareness training, inadequate security mechanisms, lack of MFA, multi-factor authentication. So the reality is, when Facebook, LinkedIn, your healthcare provider, your payroll company, any web portal is offering you the ability to have a secondary method to authenticate it's you, take advantage of it. Do not pass that up, because most of those organizations offer a web portal, and those web portals, just to have access without a secondary way to authenticate that it is really you versus someone else, is invaluable. Weak perimeter security. The days of firewalls and antiviruses are gone. They're not going to protect you any longer. Enforced technology policies, poor password management, if any, lack of upper management endorsement. This is probably the most important one, and we'll touch on it in a second, and third-party breaches of your data. The reality is this: if the top-down management is the approach for how an organization is successful, you look to their leadership and visionaries to help bring ideas, concepts, and revenue opportunities to an organization. They also must understand and endorse the need to have a stronger security posture to help protect all the good that's happening from all the sweat equity and efforts of themselves and their employees. So when we identify lack of upper management endorsement, sometimes security doesn't get the type of spotlight that it should get until it's too late. And it's up to us as security providers and technologists to help our clients identify and mitigate those times of it being too late. So, how do we prevent a breach? It comes down, in my opinion, to people, passwords, and process. People, are and always will be the weakest link in an organization's security posture, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Passwords, to me, what I've seen in the industry and with a lot of, especially small, medium-sized businesses, maybe they don't have the type of password policies and practices that they should simply because they may not be an enterprise level organization. They're not recognizing that the data that they house and the information that they have is of equal value to that of a much larger organization in many, many ways. And process, it's good to talk a game, but unless you're backing it up with a process and, checking it regularly, it's all for naught. Security isn't a convenience, unfortunately. And with that inconvenience comes, maybe a better peace of mind that your organization and data are safer. So let's go into educate. Human error is the number one cause of a security breakdown, and it takes only one error from an employee to compromise the entire company, right? Someone gets an email, has an attachment. They click on the email. They don't see anything happen. The reality is a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of threats that come into a network aren't detected for, maybe 60 days, 90 days, 6 months. They lay what's called dormant. And after a while, based on certain criteria, maybe they're what's called logic bombs that activate based on certain parameters, time, activity, things like that. You never know. Staff are also the front line when it comes to cybersecurity, and they need to understand what a threat looks like, what the implications of a breach are, and what the possible cost for negligence is. I mean, yes, it can cost the company money. Yes, it can cost the company the perception of the client in their industry. Hey, how about it can cost an employee their job as well if they do something that really creates a major situation for an organization. And the best position an organization can have is to have a formal process to help educate their employees, so when they're onboarding and have their employee appropriate usage documents and handbooks, they can touch on the fact that they will or have received formal security awareness training. Incidentally, SACS Technology Advisors can help your organization implement such a training program for your employees and provide them with knowledge and tools that they need to identify potential threats and help decrease the risk of an attack. Dark web monitoring. This is a real thing. And at the end of the slide, we're going to go over some statistics, but essentially dark web monitoring is a new way to stay proactive in identifying whether any of your organization's credentials have been breached. Essentially, it's a consistent scan of the dark web for your company's domain or other criteria. More than 60% of breaches take months to discover. Scanning the dark web helps locate your company's confidential credentials sooner than later. SACS Technology Advisors has the ability to perform active dark web monitoring for your company on an ongoing basis. This scan will produce reports of activity and will alert us in real time if any compromised credentials are found. This is truly, truly invaluable. Execute and enforce. Policy security is unlike Aramco. You can't just visit it once, set it and forget it. You have to really keep on top of it. Policies and procedures should be put in place in an organization so your company can decrease the chances of a breach and outline the proper protocol if a breach does occur. These policies and procedures need to be enforced and backed by upper management so the importance to comply is understood. SACS Technology Advisors can help create and implement internal policies and procedures such as password management guidelines, multi-factor authentication implementations, and stipulations prohibiting the use of business email addresses for non-business activities. So, what if it's too late? What if my credentials have already been breached? I mean, what if I'm already on the dark web? The reality is, if your information is already on the dark web, there's not a whole lot you can really do about it to remove it. It's not like you can call a bureau and say, hey, can you get this off this anonymous website that you can't access with a regular browser? It's just not going to work. However, scanning the dark web for your data tells you immediately if a breach has occurred, so you can work to investigate the cause potentially and mitigate the damage. Look, in the event of a breach, Saks Technology Advisors can assist your company in identifying when the breach occurred, guide your organization on swift password changes, and reevaluate your organization's security practices to determine if the current provisions in place meet your security objectives and needs based on any new breaches. Security is an ongoing practice today. You know, back in the 90s, we would buy 90s, late 80s, 90s, we would buy our maybe our firewall and our antivirus, and we had it in place, and we hoped that, you know, it would protect us. But today, we're seeing things like artificial intelligence, you know, and antivirus isn't enough anymore. You need to have the type of behavior-driven and anomaly-driven detectors to determine if there's something wrong on your network besides definitions that are prefabricated. It's very much like, I always draw this analogy to a doctor and a virus. You know, we can go in and ask for the flu, and we can hope that the flu shot hits the many strains that it's designed for. But the reality is there's new strains coming out all the time. And we could say to our doctor, what the heck? You know, I got the shot and I am a mess. I'm laid up. I have pains. I'm sick. And the doctor's going to say, look, we can only protect against the flu viruses that we know about. Everything that comes in new, we have to scurry and try to build up a vaccine. Absolutely no difference in technology. So, are your credentials on the dark web? I am going to be doing one last poll. And I'd like you all to take a look at this poll. And what the poll is asking, just guessing if you can figure out what percentage of the registered attendees have had their corporate credentials breached to the dark web, let's say within the last year. Okay, numbers are shifting. The voting is going wild, I could see. Fantastic. Okay. Wow, this is pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and share this information. So amongst the attendees, it looks like 30% feel that 25% or less of the registered attendees have had their corporate credentials breached. 30% feel that 50% or less, and 35% feel that 75%, and 4 are hitting 90 or above. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you what the true percentage is of those registered attendees who gave us the okay to scan if their credentials were breached on the dark web. After I show this number, you could certainly reach out to us to discuss if it was you, how much of it was you, and what we could do together to help make sure we keep your organization safe. Ladies and gentlemen, the exciting number is 84%. 84% of the registered attendees who gave us the okay to search the dark web for their credentials have had a breach within the past at least 90 days, if not a year. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for attending this webinar today. Hopefully you've learned something from it. I'd like to open up the floor to questions and answers. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to type it in to the question box, and I'll be happy to field them. We give people a few minutes. Let's see the results. So yeah, the results were there. So we identified it was 84% of the registered attendees who said, okay, go ahead and scan our domain. Incidentally, for the people that are still on, so while we certainly adhered to the request of not scanning, the reality is the dark web is public information. And if it's accessible through certain technology, it could be scanned. Whether we scan it or not, the more important thing to remember is those who are wrongdoers can scan it. So it's really important to make sure that you do what you can to help protect your organization, your employees, and your customers. If there are any questions, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you folks your day back. I hope you found the last 35 minutes or so informative. We've been recording this. Again, my contact information is on the screen. I look forward to speaking with you folks soon. And thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Happy holidays. Thank you.